Welcome. My name's Ashley, and I'm here with a bunch of other amazing birth mothers that I'll let introduce themselves, and with Vicki and Carrie with Abiding Love Adoptions in, oh my gosh, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida now, but they're at home in Georgia. And we are going to have a conversation. These ladies wanted to come to the table and say, where's the pain coming from? Where have the professionals failed you? We are not the professionals that you worked with. And so how can we help explain some of the things that were done wrong for you? And we've seen this so much. There's so much hurt in so many of the birth moms, and they just don't understand what happened. We're coming back, all of these years later going, I knew there was grief because I was missing my child, but I think there's grief because I kind of got screwed. And some of the women really did get screwed from the professionals that were supposed to respect them, that were supposed to take care of them, that they trusted with such a life-changing decision. And they're mad about it, and they should be. And I know I was failed in post-placement care. I know the women will be able to share a little bit about some of that too. And so we wanted to call the professionals out and say, what the heck? Please explain this. Why does this work like this? Why do they do this? Why don't they do this? Why isn't this the standard? And we had amazing questions submitted. And so Carrie and Vicki are going to sit in the hot seat and let us just fire away at them so that we can get answers for expectant parents and for birth parents about what the expectations are, what the standard should be, and why there are professionals that we believe are trying to do this differently. And we believe that Abiding Love is one of them. And so that's just a little bit about what this conversation is about. So yeah, Carrie, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm just excited to be here. We keep seeing on our social media feed moms that are upset, and they have every right to be. I'm hearing some of their stories, and as an attorney, I'm horrified. As a social worker, I'm horrified. That's one of the reasons that we started Abiding Love. I am an adoption attorney. I've been practicing since 2005. I'm getting old, at any rate. And I kept seeing, I was hired as an attorney to go into a hospital room and take, in Georgia, we call it surrenders. And I was the first person that these women were ever seeing in person. And I was getting yelled at by the agency because I was actually giving her a tissue while she cried and caring about her and can I feed you? Because I'm Southern. We just feed people. That's what we do. I don't know what else to do other than hand you a tissue and food and say, I love you and I'm going to be there for you. But I was told to stay in my lane as an attorney. And I do understand that there are roles. And so that's one of the reasons that we started Abiding Love, because we wanted to be able to create something that was different. Vicki can tell you, we kept looking, and I kept praying for an agency to come about because I really didn't want to create an agency. I like just being an attorney. I didn't want to have the state coming into my office at random times and looking at all my files and doing all this stuff that we, as an agency, we are required to do because it's a lot of work. But nobody was stepping up and filling that void. And we felt that expectant moms and birth moms were falling through the cracks. So we created Abiding Love to be able to be focused on expectant moms and birth moms. That's our passion. Do we get it wrong? Sure. I mean, that's why we're here. We want to change things. A lot of the stuff that we're seeing on social media, we didn't work with these women. So it's hard because I want to be like, you're throwing this on us, that we are part of them, that we, just by association of being an agency, but we want to answer these questions. We want to know what went wrong so that we can make sure for Abiding Love that we aren't doing that now. We want to learn from it. So I'm excited to sit down with y'all because we want to have these hard conversations so we can understand and know how we can love these women so well, because we really we have that passion and desire to love them well, not just before placement, but well after. And I think, Ashley, you can attest to that. You come down to our groups several times, and I mean, these women are family to us. So.
Yeah, so just full disclosure, I have worked with Carrie and Vicki. I've trained their staff. They run our post-placement support groups. They're free support groups for birth mothers, whether they worked with these ladies or not. But the other birth moms that are here with us today, we all have very diverse stories, and none of them have personally worked with you or been to your group. So I definitely am sharing my testimony that I have worked with these women. I have sat with these women and their team. I have sat with their families, and I have sat with their birth mom community. I fell in love with their community. They have an incredible demographic, so many roadblocks and so many things that they're facing because of the location that they're in. But I have witnessed personally, watched them show up. And so I can sit here and sing praises about Abiding Love as an agency, but I'm very glad that we've got 3 other birth moms on here that haven't worked with you, that don't know your demographic, that don't know the women. And so they're coming. So I'm a little biased because I love you and I love your agency and I love that you run our program. But these women are coming from a way more neutral space as far as that goes. So I'm grateful to have women on here that don't know you the way that I do, that can ask questions that wouldn't feed any kind of personal agenda. So I'm really grateful for that too. So I guess we'll just kind of go around. I'll just call on the women to ask questions. But Vicki, if you wanted to add anything before we jump in, and then the birth moms can take a second and just introduce themselves and just a little bit about their background before they ask, just so everyone can kind of get an idea of where they're coming from on that first question. And then we'll just kind of work around if you guys are good with that. Vicki,
Okay.
did you want to say something? Yes.
Well, I mean, actually, Carrie, I think, described us pretty well. So I'm good to go ahead and just, if you want to know more about me as a person, you can go to our website. Be quiet. You can go to our website and read my little bio if you want to learn more about all my little nitty gritty. I don't want to take up time talking about myself. I'm excited about this because I am, again, y'all don't know me, but I'm very fiercely protective of my mamas, and I do not play. There's like one hospital doesn't like for me to show up because me and their nurses don't get along. So,
I have bail money set out just for when she goes to that hospital, because at some point we will need bail money.
or at least an attorney letter, something. So anyway, you'd think they would know better by now. But anyway, so let's get started. I'm excited.
Okay. Well, again, we really appreciate you guys being willing to sit in the hot seat. We know that this is maybe never done before to have a panel of birth mothers be able to ask such really tough questions, and we're kind of putting them in the hot seat. So I really appreciate that. So we're going to start with Amy Erickson. And Amy, if you'll just take some time and just introduce yourself, and then just a little brief background about your adoption, just so we kind of know where you're coming from as a birth mother, and then pick one of the questions on your list and let's get started.
Okay. Well, I'm Amy Erickson. I actually placed about almost 25 years ago. My daughter will be 25 in a couple weeks. So it was 1995. I was 16 when I had her. So obviously that wasn't planned pregnancy. So I placed into a closed adoption. At that time, there was not really a choice. So I had a closed adoption. It was a situation where I did choose the family, but I did not, it was completely anonymous, no names, no personal information shared. So we were reunited when shortly after her 18th birthday, when they actually contacted me and were interested in reunion. So that's been almost 7 years ago. Needless to say, the last 7 years have been quite a roller coaster as far as revisiting the 18 years that I chose to really kind of ignore that I had been through that experience completely. So after I placed, there was no post-placement support whatsoever. I really was encouraged to just move on and kind of go on with my life and basically forget that I had been through it. Like those words were literally said to me. So obviously I never forgot. So so here I am today. I've had lots of opportunity in the last 7 years to meet lots of women as I searched for support when I started to realize that I really needed it. And I'm really grateful to be here because I love these sorts of opportunities to ask the hard questions and talk about the things that are very personal to me. So with that, one of the things that I always think about with agencies is, what sort of specific measures do you have in place to deal with women who are very young, expectant moms who come in who are teenagers, or maybe even under 21, who are in a situation where they're just getting started with their lives, or maybe have no family support. But being so young, I feel like, especially in my situation, there was a lot of education that I was never given. I think that it was really placed on my parents to say, this is what the choice is, and you need to encourage her to do it. And that really was how it worked for me. I didn't know anything about my options, my rights. I did not really truly understand what relinquishment meant at the time. All I knew is that they were going to be taking my baby and I wouldn't be seeing her for at least 18 years. And that was it. So I'm really interested to know how things have changed, and what sorts of programs you have specifically for very young mothers.
Well, if Carrie doesn't mind me taking that, one of the first things we do, the youngest client I've ever worked with was 12. And so what we like to do, and we do this not only with underage clients, but with clients that we have that may have lower IQs, in different situations that come to us. We try to always give the opportunity for the mom to have her own counsel. That's like across the board. If they want to do that, we don't tell them what attorney to use. We offer to pay for it, but we don't direct them to where to go. And so that's their decision. Some take us up on it, some don't. But when we have underage girls or young women who are, and I really don't know how to say it, but just have learning challenges and learn differently, we insist that they have their own attorney. And at that point, and we really, with the younger ones, Carrie and I prefer to have someone who has experience with like CASA or something like that, so that they are familiar with working with not young adults, but, children essentially, and can help us make sure that they understand to the best of our ability what choice they're making. But there has to be a little bit of grace extended, because at that age, your brain is not fully developed. And we all know that, especially at 12. And so you just keep working and keep working and keep working with them, and you keep having the same conversations, and you keep, we like it in those situations when they come to us early, so we have enough time to really go through all of this with them. And try to the best of our ability. We always pay for professional counseling if that's what somebody wants. I do have a master's degree in human services counseling, but I also think it's important that they have somebody outside of me, because maybe they don't want to hurt my feelings because they like me. And so I always want them to have somebody that they can say, you know what, Miss Vicki was ugly today. And I didn't want to tell her that, but she was ugly and I don't know what to do. And so we always want them to have somebody, and that's for any mama that we work with, but we always want them to have somebody else that they can talk to also. So I don't know if that truly answers your question, but we try in every way that we can. I have a 17-year-old, if he was in that situation, I would want to make sure that if he was making this choice, he had every opportunity to talk to whoever he needed to talk to make sure he understood what he was doing. So that's kind of how we approach it. And Carrie, feel free to add.
Yeah, just to add, we really do believe it's important having someone that is a minor, and having family around. There's this road you got to walk of wanting to make sure you're respectful to her parents, and listening to them, but she's the decision maker. The parents aren't. And so we have to sit down directly with her. And sometimes we ask permission if it can be away from her parents or whoever is kind of basically driving that boat, because this is not their decision, this is her decision. And I think that's something we've seen a lot. As an attorney, I kept seeing that, and I kept saying, this is a conflict of interest because, that she's the one making the decision. So we try to sit there and talk with her. There are times where she'll say, no, I want them here with me, and I don't want to talk to you, just one-on-one. And we respect that, but then we're going to have the same conversation that we would have had even if they had stepped away, of saying, look, this is your decision, not her decision, not his decision, your decision. You're the mom, and giving her the tools that she needs on that. So I would just add that.
Perfect. Thank you. Amy, did you want to add anything on that?
I was just going to comment that I do really like the idea of having, encouraging some sort of unbiased counsel outside of meeting with the agency. That's something that I never did and was never encouraged to do. And I think that that's really important for every woman to have.
One of the things
Awesome. Go ahead.
Get y'all's opinion on is, we encourage, we're like, look, we got professional counselors, we'll pay for it, we'll make it available. We have had the counselors say, look, you need to give them my number so that they make the appointment rather than us making the appointment. The counselors are very specific about that. But so many of our moms don't take us up on it. Is there anything else? Because we really do believe there needs to be separate counseling, just like you said, but I can't make them do it. We can't make them do that. Also similar with attorneys, we will make them, we'll give them the number and everything and say, look, we want you to have your own separate counsel to go through this. By the way, it's the attorney and me, but we always go through all of the documents well before the hospital. I was always astonished as an attorney that this, when I would go in to basically take a surrender or consent, that was the first time she'd ever seen any of this. And that just blew my mind as an attorney. So that's always done. But many of the women don't take us up on our offer to pay for them to have an independent attorney, and then also a counselor. Some people have said, well, you just make the appointment and make them go. But I don't want people to feel like I'm forcing them to do that either. It's that road, that tightrope. Any advice on that?
Well, real quick, and just to clarify, if they don't have a number, we'll give them a list of numbers, but we don't dictate who they go for counseling, and we don't dictate their attorney. They can pick. Like we don't dictate. I don't want her to think that I'm setting her up, that I'm sending her to a counselor that I have spoon fed what to say. Right. Or I'm sending her to an attorney that I have spoon-fed what to say. So they can choose whoever they want. We do ask they actually choose an attorney that knows adoption law. I don't want to deal with somebody who has criminal law. But
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
This is actually like one of my questions. But I mean, I am a big supporter too of separate representation. But I know it's tricky because out in California, they like say, oh, we do separate representation, but it's really a buddy system. I mean, they just call their friend, and it's not really authentic representation. It's just their friend is representing this woman, and they're not actually, advocating for her. They're advocating for the adoption. So she kind of can get, potentially, if she has one of those attorneys that's not like ethically sound, she can get trapped in one of those situations where her own attorney is against her. So I mean, do you have like a list for her if she does say, okay, I do need an attorney, but I don't know who to go to? Do you have, I mean, it's such a fine line.
The American Academy of Adoption Attorneys, we will recommend for them to go on their website and they can click in their states. My only frustration with that is there are some good attorneys that focus on adoption that are not in the academy, like myself, just because I never had time to fill out all the paperwork. I'm too busy doing other stuff. So, it's
some of the Quad A attorneys aren't good just the same.
Well, and yeah,
old school,
and I agree with that, but that's
ding,
my starting
ding,
point.
Ding. Just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. but that's our starting point, is that, we're blessed in Georgia that we've got some really good adoption attorneys, and we're blessed in Florida that there's some really good adoption attorneys. Florida has the Florida Adoption Council, and they're really strong. Alabama, we're still getting our footing.
Yeah. No, a lot of states aren't even to that step yet. So
yeah, so it's hard, like depending on the state of where to recommend, because I've got 2 that I can seriously recommend in Alabama, and it's not because I were in the buddy, it's because they're only competent to do adoption.
Right. Okay.
But I always say we start there, and I want them to do their own research. We want them to do that. But reality is a lot of people don't. But that's where we start.
Okay. So I want to add one thing to this, and then I want to move on. We'll go down to Sarah and let her ask another question, because this comes up a lot about having separate legal representation and all of that. And we believe that that's 100% ethical, and each individual in this should have representation that is an advocate for them. I will say, for someone like me who has had dealings with the law and has had probation officers and jail time and all of these things, this is already really scary and overwhelming. And when you say you need legal representation, here's a list of lawyers, I'm going, no, that is scary. And I've dealt with the law, and it's scary. And I can barely process the fact that I'm pregnant, and now you're putting this huge responsibility on me. And when you start talking about lawyers and law, this starts to feel not just like having a baby and making an adoption plan. So just from my perspective, I don't know that I think I would be very scared, especially in those younger years, to be proactive enough to say, I need an advocate and I'm going to call this lawyer, because that's terrifying. So just from my perspective, just saying, here's a list, I can understand why some women would be like, hell no, I'm not calling them. So that's my, just from someone who's had a lot of that experience, the legal piece feels very scary and real and way bigger than just giving birth. And you know what I mean? So that's just, I could totally understand hesitation from that perspective.
Well, and that's kind of why Abiding Love is structured so differently. We have, like, I and my team, the advocates, what do you call that, Carrie? A China wall, whatever you call that. Oh, I might be being racist right now, but whatever it is in the legal term.
Kelsey she can get my back. It is a legal term of a Chinese wall, right?
Okay. Well, anyway, we kind of have that system at Abiding Love. And so if I'm working with someone, I don't interact, like we don't even get involved with adoptive parents at all until she's sure this is what she wants to do. And so then if she wants to do it, still I don't get involved with adoptive parents. Like, and then the first time I meet these adoptive parents is the first time she meets the adoptive parents. And then at that point, they still don't get my phone number, they get Carrie's. And so the adoptive family deals with Carrie, and I and my team still stay with our mamas.
Yeah.
And so we offer that wall for her, so that if she, because what you said, Ashley, is so true. And I've had, and people who like either were in the foster care, we have a very different demographic. I'm just going to be honest with who we work with. And so we have trafficked women. We have women who are abused in foster care system. We have we get some really tough cases.
Yep.
And to say, hey, let's go to a counselor, like, nah, you good.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you. I ain't talking to nobody else. I'll talk to you. So one of the things, and they don't want to go to an attorney exactly for the same reason you just said. So one of the things we then try to do is say, okay, well, if they're not close to their mom, if they are close to them, we basically ask them to identify who is that person, like if you are in jail, who's the one person you know that's going to call, that you can call, who's going to answer the phone. Or who's that rock for you in your life. And then we try to get them involved in this placement so that they can, in the sense that they can, when we go over legal paperwork, they have somebody that's in their corner that's not just us. Again, sometimes they take us up on it, sometimes they don't, but it is conversations that we have. And that's how we try to help with that. When they don't want to do a list, or that's that's kind of what we do, is try to see if there's somebody else in their life that they feel like they could lean on and really talk through this independent of us. So
awesome. Okay, let's move on. Sarah, why don't you go ahead, just give a little brief introduction about just kind of your situation, and then go ahead and fire another question.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I apologize that I keep stepping out of frame. I have a 3-year-old and he's kind of being fed snacks as we do this. So
we're all quarantined right now, so there's a lot of grace on this video.
Yes. So if I step out of frame, that's why. I'm just making sure that he's all set and everything's good. So he keeps coming to give me high fives. So you'll see me like reaching out. But I am Sarah Schmidt.
I can't hear.
Okay.
Yeah, Sarah, I think we lost your connection.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, because I can hear you guys, and I saw the thing come across, and I was like, oh, wait, hold on. Okay, sorry about that. My name is Sarah Schmidt, and I am a 2-time birth mother. I have an almost 17-year-old. He'll be 17 in April, and I have an 18-year-old daughter, and they got adopted by the same couple, 19 months apart. We have had an open adoption the whole time. But I decided to choose to step back when they each turned 2, which is a little bit of a different thing. I don't know very many birth mothers that are just like, hey, I'm going to, step back a little bit. But it's funny because the smaller my circle gets, the more I realize, no, we kind of all do that at some point. So let's see, for the last 18 years, we had what most would deem a kind of quote unquote perfect adoption as far as open adoptions go. They were very advocate for me throughout my life. They definitely separated me from the kids and made that relationship special to them. And as much as I didn't see them in person, we still talked and communicated, and I still got updates and pictures, and my family was really involved. And so my parents and my brothers got to be a part of their lives. My brothers were 10 and 8 when it happened. So when the first placement happened. So we worked with agencies and then lawyers. So the first adoption was through an agency. The second was through a private adoption attorney. So we kind of have gone both routes. So I kind of had questions on both sides. But since, let's see, since about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, their adoptive parents separated and have since gotten divorced. And they are now all living in a really kind of interesting situation. My daughter is living with her mom, and my son is living down in Arkansas with family friends so that he can go to a high school that he's wanted to go to for a while, that feeds into a camp that he went to when he was little. It's just kind of a weird dynamic right now. And so a lot of blinders have been ripped off in the last couple of years, and it's really made me have questions, with the knowledge that I have now. When I was deciding on placement, it was clear to me very early on that placement was what I was going to choose. But it was kind of my default choice, if I'm honest, because I wasn't going to get an abortion. I actually had made an appointment to get an abortion, and my parents ended up finding out that I was pregnant, and that was like, okay, well, I'm not getting an abortion anymore. And so now I have to choose whether I'm going to parent or whether I'm going to place for adoption. And my boyfriend at the time proposed. And when I say proposed, I mean, told me that he needed to take responsibility for his actions and that he had spoken to his dad. And that means that I needed to marry him. And I, in that moment, threw adoption in his face and was like, nope, I'm choosing adoption. So you don't have to worry about that. And the look of relief that came over his face was like, oh, well, even if I would have chosen to parent, I would have been on this by myself. So so adoption was kind of my default at first, but then I started working with an agency because we had a
Oh, I lost you again.
Are we still good?
You're good now.
Okay. Where did I lose you at?
I don't know. You were kind of getting into just a little bit about your second placement, and then you were going to ask your question.
Yes. When I started working with an agency, you know, we had a family friend that was working for the agency that I started working with. And in hindsight, probably not a smart decision to work with an agency that's a family friend that, you know, and so there was a lot of talk of, you know, better life, the hero mentality of me making this brave choice to start a family for this couple. And I did choose the couple that I decided to go with to raise my children, and they, you know, they're human. We're all human, but in the moment, they seemed perfect to me. Like I put them on a pedestal because they were everything that I wasn't, and they had, you know, the dad figure and all of that stuff. And so really my first question would be, what are you doing to change the better life rhetoric to expectant mothers that adoptive parents are maybe saving or rescuing children, or the hero mentality of adoption really being the brave choice, and kind of glossing over, I guess, what the genuine aspects are of all of that.
Well, we approach it when we start counseling, we approach things differently. And honestly, I'm an adoptive mom. I guess I should have disclosed that, but I'm an adoptive mom of 3, and we have wide open adoptions. And actually, my second son's mom is the one who politely put me in my place one day. And she was like, we were talking, and somebody said, I was like, you know, I said, do you ever get that people say all the time that, you know, it was so nice of you to give him a better life and all this stuff? And she was like, yeah. She said, but I didn't choose you because I wanted him to have a better life. I chose you because I wanted him to have a different life. Mm-hmm. And I was like, huh, you know, and then she went on like a little, we were close enough she could basically go off on me, and she did. And so, you know, and I took it and I listened, and that was probably my first stepping into that and really getting educated right from her, you know, because you know, she just wanted him to have a different life. And so basically when we talk about it to adoptive families, we talk about it to our expectant mamas. I don't like that language, especially, like I said, I don't want her coming after me. But I don't like that language because it's kind of like how you feel about being put on a pedestal, like you're a hero, this was selfless, all that stuff, and it kind of can make you uncomfortable. I can speak for me and most adoptive parents, it makes us feel the same way. There are some that haven't caught that train yet, but so what we do with the mamas is that we just try to we talk a lot about grief. We talk a lot about this is a loss you're going to live with for the rest of your life. Are you sure you want to do it? I have this one little analogy that I do where there's like, I draw a box, and it's like all over the page when we really start getting into it. And this is way before we do paperwork or anything like that. Like we spend a lot of time talking about this is like a lifetime decision. And so there's a box, and I draw I draw a box, and then I draw this big I draw a big button because I don't always have crayons on me. And then I draw like a balloon. And so we talk about like right when it first happens, your pain is going to fill up every inch of this box. So every time you try to even take a breath, you're going to hit that button. It's just going to overwhelm you, and you're going to hit that button. And are you ready for that? And then we talk about, you know, as you build a relationship and as time comes and you kind of accept your new role, and we talk about what that is. Then we draw different boxes as how, like, essentially the balloon never goes away, but you can think about it and it won't automatically hit that button anymore, and you'll have a different view. So that, I guess, and I don't know if that truly answers your question. If it doesn't, please correct me, but we try to tell people ahead of time, because I read a lot and I've learned a lot from my moms. I've gotten really close to them, and even the birth fathers, and I've learned a lot from them. And they're like, somebody, and when I read comments and when I read other things, kind of like what Amy was saying, is that nobody prepared her for the other side. And so do I hope people are listening when we go through this? Because we have this whole thing all my advocates do. Yeah, I hope so. But I don't know how much people are grasping, but we really try to prepare them that it's not sunshine and rainbows. That's what I tell them. I'm like, you're going to hurt, and you're going to hurt for a minute. And it's not sunshine and rainbows.
Well, and to go into the talking about giving a better life, all of that, we talk a lot about that, not only in the pre-placement, but post-placement in groups. And, so we talk a lot about that idea of this isn't a better life. It's a different life. And so I would love to get y'all's perspective on that language of a different life, because that's something that came from one of our birth moms. But I also want to add that, we want to prepare adoptive parents well, and we really believe that happens at the home study portion. That means we've got to educate them that they are not saviors. They are not rescuers. They are not providing a better life. I know Vicki said that there's a lot of adoptive parents that, are on this train that get it, but there's a lot that don't get it still. And they think that they're swooping in. And so we really believe that happens at the home study place. And so that's one of the places we're really passionate about, and making sure that we're preparing the adoptive parents. So when they get to the point where they are matched or chosen, whatever you want to call, and starting that relationship, they're coming into it already dealing with their crap that they have experienced, either if it's their own grief and loss through infertility, or for whatever issues are bringing them to the table regarding adoption. They've got to deal with their own stuff too. So, and that savior complex is part of it. And in talking with our women in post-placement, having this savior complex, also, or hero complex, put on them, that they are angelic because they did this, that has, I've listened to these women and how much pressure it puts on them. And then that creates a whole nother set of layer of feelings that are, we're having to work through. So I think it's important for agencies to be preparing the prospective adoptive parents to get them to understand, nope, that's not what's going on, but also to prepare the birth parents, expectant parents, that, hey, you need to be prepared for this down the road, and how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to work through that? One of my, it's a pet peeve of mine, is, you see these.
He has a lot more than one, by the way.
But one of my biggest pet peeves is, this whole orphan language. And because I spent my summers in Romania in orphanages as a kid, and working there, and what we are doing is not orphan care. And I really hate that, because there is orphan care going on and it's needed, and there is that. But what we're doing in the domestic adoption world is not swooping in and saving this baby. And so that's something that, is really a big deal to us, especially as we're doing home studies and educating. And if I see that from one of the prospective adoptive families that I know we did the home study, if I see something like that, or in their Facebook feed or Instagram, I'm calling them out on it, because it's one of my biggest pet peeves.
But I have a kind of a counter question, if you don't mind. Well, unless Ashley, do you want me to hush?
Well, no, this was going to lead into a question that I know that was on Kelsey and I's, both of our lists, and I would love for her to take a second to introduce herself. But I
Okay.
know that this question was on her list, asking, that's great, but you guys, because you work with consultants, don't work. How do you vet your families if you don't do their home study to know that they are of the caliber that you expect them to be? Because you can't guarantee, when you're not housing the families and doing all the home studies and sitting with them, because I'm sorry, there are a lot of adoptive parents that just should not be able to adopt because they are not on that level. And you don't get to do the home studies of every family that you work with. And so how do you vet them with being hands off? But I want to, so sit on that question, but I want Kelsey to kind of, because I know this question was very similar to one on her list. And then Vicki, you can come back to what you wanted to say. But I want Kelsey to have a chance to introduce herself and then just kind of go, Kelsey, I just took your question, but kind of lead into that a little bit with what was on your list.
Kelsey also needs to confirm the Chinese wall legal.
I don't really know anything about that, so I think you're on your own with that one, Carrie.
Is that only taught in Georgia law schools?
Kelsey, don't attach
What
to
subject are we talking about?
Ethics. Have you taken ethics?
No, not yet.
Okay, call me when you've taken legal ethics.
Okay.
I know that's like a.
I don't know. LA might be a little bit too PC for that term. I'm not sure. We'll find out.
I went to law
okay.
school in South Georgia, so.
Yeah, it's quite different, I'm sure. So I'm Kelsey. I placed almost 4 years ago now. I'm from Indiana, so I'm not from LA. So I hope you're not like judging me too hard. But I'm trying to think now. I'm blanking. For once in my life, I don't have words. I would say a year out of placement, I started working for an agency in Indianapolis, and it was a really great experience in that there is no perfect agency, as we know, but they allowed me to come in and change them. And they were willing to have me just kind of just lay it on them, and they would take it. So that was really nice. Sorry if that's loud. But then I left after a year and a half. Sorry, LAPD is going over my house right now.
What did you do, Kelsey? Do you need an attorney?
Yeah, I think so. They're always circling my house because they live in the hood. That's why. So, anyways, so I came out to Southern California about a year and a half ago, and I worked for an adoption attorney in Laguna Beach. And then, so I kind of have gotten to see both the law side and the agency side, and I've worked for an attorney in Indianapolis as well. So it's been a really interesting, and before I worked in adoption, I worked in litigation. I was a litigation paralegal. So it's been interesting to come from such an adversarial part of law and coming into, adoption, which is, they say, is like the happiest day in court, So, and from a birth mom perspective, just working in this field, I've had really weird conversations with colleagues, like horrible conversations with colleagues, good ones, but still like problematic. And then, but now I'm in law school, so I'm a little removed from the field. I'm working for True Adopt right now, with Celeste Liversidge, but I'm not full time. And so, I kind of see things going on from afar, but I'm not really in it as much as I was. So, but yeah, I think for me, I placed through an attorney, and once I placed, I never heard from them again. So, they came in their bow tie and had me sign and left, sent me a check 6 weeks later, and I never heard from them again. So they weren't concerned with getting me counseling. And they're one of the biggest firms, adoption firms in the country. And they just didn't care. So I think Yeah, so going back to, I know you work with consultants. Obviously, that's there's a lot there. But I think I guess I want to know. Hold on, I have all these written down. But yeah, I just want to know how you vet those families. The same question that Ashley asked, and I also wanted to know, like, how are they getting the proper education, and have you had situations in the past where adoptive parents have abandoned their openness? And because even working at a good agency, I know that we had that, like, every once in a blue moon, we had adoptive parents who kind of lied their way through the process and then just, jump ship as soon as papers were signed or after 2 years or stuff like that. So I want to know, like, if that's happened and how do you handle that? How are you prepared to handle that? I'm done.
Let me, Vicki, let me answer. I want to kind of explain how we're set up, because I think that's something we haven't explained really well. And then let me explain, from a legal end and everything, what happens when we find out someone hasn't followed through. And then Vicki, I'll give you the rest of those. Is that okay to answer?
Sure. We get to tell them about our great conference calls we get to have with these people that try to come under our umbrella.
Those are good. Okay, so Abiding Love is structured different than other agencies, and we did this purposefully. So there's kind of like two branches of Abiding Love. We will do a home study, and I'm going to say we do a great home study. And I really, not only do we do it well paper-wise, and it's the attorney and me, and we're everything ready for ICPC, organized, all of our T's crossed and I's dotted. But also, we really, again, believe in education. When we finish that home study, though, we don't have a waiting list, and we did that purposefully. When we created Abiding Love, we wanted to be there for expectant moms, and we have really struggled with this. Within the last year, we've considered changing our model. We've considered different things, but our model is, that we don't have a waiting list, and we like not having a waiting list, because then when we are on the other part of Abiding Love, which is loving expectant moms and birth moms well, we feel like it's talking out of both sides of our mouth. If we're sitting here saying we want to be there for you to make a decision, whether it's parenting or adopting, and yet we have this long list of families who are waiting for your child. We just felt like that's talking out of both sides of our mouth. But then we also have this other issue of, how do we make sure when we do have a mom and we've counseled with her, and she wants to make an adoption plan, or believes that's what's best, at least. Nobody really wants to make an adoption plan, right? And we will reach out to adoption consultant, and they will send a situation description. They'll send us profiles of families that are interested. We show those to her, she chooses, and then they come under the umbrella of Abiding Love. So that's our model, and we have reconsidered, we've moved things around, added some new tools in, because we want to make sure that we have people that really want to love her and love her well. In the situation description we send out, we are very honest about the kind of open adoption and what she defines open adoption to be. Not just, hey, she wants an open adoption, or she wants a partial open adoption, all those clinical terms which mean nothing, because every adoption is different. So we will define that. Georgia, and this goes into the enforcement part. Who would have thought that Georgia actually is like progressive with something? Because I know we're like a southern state, and we're supposed to be. Yes, you. We're like supposed to be like, kind of old fashioned and all this stuff. But hey, people, we are progressive. We have an enforceable post-adoption contact agreement. And I love that about Georgia. And I really think one of the things that all of us need to be doing is to be pushing this for every state. Every state should have an enforceable post-adoption contact agreement. I didn't hear you, Vicki.
No, I was saying every.
It was me. I just said I agree.
Every state needs one of those, because it makes it hard for me when I'm counseling in one state that doesn't have it, and then I have my Georgia state that does have it, and I want every state to have it. Every state.
So yeah, we have it too, and so I guess, can I ask another question then? Because we are experiencing where women are now coming back and saying they're not upholding this. So what is your step then? Because, you know, obviously you can go into negotiations with them and try to like work it out, but then some people they will end up going to court over it. And what does the court, I mean, how does the court see it in Georgia, and what do you do about that?
Yeah, so our post-adoption contact agreement that we have is it's unique to us. So we have taken, Georgia is very specific as to certain language that has to be in it. I mean, Georgia is even like what size font and what font I can use. I mean, those things. But we have added some special things because we want to protect birth moms. We have in there first that everybody tries mediation, and we have in there that it's going to be a mediator from the United States Mediation Agreement, or mediators, whatever group. And whoever is in the wrong, and it's almost like arbitration, but it's actually mediation. Whoever's in the wrong has to pay everybody's attorney's fees and mediation fees. So the first step is mediation. Second, if mediation doesn't work and you go to court, again, whoever is in the wrong pays for everybody's court fees and attorney's fees. So we do that in order so that an expectant mom doesn't feel like, oh, well, they have all this money to lawyer up and I don't have any money to get an attorney. So an attorney is going to be able to look at that agreement and be like, okay, I'll take this on contingency. And because I know, if the facts are what she's saying it is, then I'll get paid. So we do that. We have been, we've had one situation in recent years. And so we have kind of acted as an intermediary to make sure, because honestly, both people were speaking different languages, not literally, but just they weren't hearing each other. And so we were able to provide that sounding board, and all of us, came together, and it was like 3 years after placement, I think. So we were still, they both called us, and we were still able to help. But I really believe in having that language in the post-adoption contact agreement to protect moms so that they can hire an attorney. I also put in our post-adoption agreement that the jurisdiction for this will be wherever the birth mom lives. And so that also helps her as well.
So to answer the question about what do we do, because we didn't do the family's home study. Like Carrie said, we get very specific in our situation descriptions to the point of open adoption. So if she wants to be able to text back and forth, I say, oh, the adoptive mom will share her phone number and they will text each other. They will have a relationship. And then, so it gets very, very specific like that. So in the consultants that we do work with, they know how serious I am about that. So they know that don't send me somebody that's not, you know what I mean? Like, don't, because they should know their clients. And so don't send me somebody who's, like you said, who's kind of lied their way through it. And so the biggest thing that I think, but we have caught some, but it's not really with the openness. It's more with education and the mentalities that y'all have been sharing, and we have caught some. And we usually catch them because if I'm not the advocate for the birth mom, then what happens is it's one of my team members. And so then I will get on the initial conference call with the adoptive parents that she's chosen. And so when we're on the call and we start asking questions, and I don't know how y'all feel about this, but one of the things that makes us very controversial to adoptive parents is I don't share everybody's sins. Unless you're going to put a list of your sins that I can give to the birth mom, I ain't giving you all their stuff. I'm going to give you legally what I have to give you. I'm going to give you, and I don't send out that whole nonsense about agencies giving out complete medical records before there's been any legal termination paperwork. That's what y'all need to rise up about too, just saying. But anyway, that's another argument. That's another Zoom. But I give out legally what I have to give out according to the law, which is if there's mental health information, if there's health issues, things like that. I give out basic facts. I give out why she's placing, but it's a very generic why she's placing. It's either she is looking for more stability or something like that. It's not that, oh, well, she sells herself at Friday nights on the corner and she lives in a hotel. You know what I mean? Like I don't do that. And so one of the things that we get a lot of flack about is that we don't give out as much information about our birth moms or expectant moms as other agencies. But I feel very strongly about that, because you're building a brand new relationship, and it is none of their business what your sins are. If it's not going to affect your relationship with that baby, and, you know, we've all messed up. And hers might be a little more public right now, but I guarantee you, if I start digging in your closet, I'm going to probably find something too that you're ashamed of. And so, like, we had one set of parents that we actually thought we were going to call off. We weren't going to let them adopt. We were talking to them, and they were coming from this whole, like, oh, they're scared of the birth mom. You know what I'm talking about, that whole birth moms are scary narrative. And I was listening, and finally I was like, you know what? I said, y'all are sitting here acting so scared of her. I said, but she picked you out of a book. She looked at several books, and she's putting her trust in me to say that you're ethical because she trusts me. And you want to sit here and be scared of her when she's giving you her child. And I said, so, and you know what? And I said, you've done this home study, and people have visited you and interviewed you. And I said, but anybody can put on a show for 3 interviews. I said, so essentially, I said, you could be going on your computer at night and watching child porn for all I know. I said, and you want to sit there and be scared of her? And they all
She literally said that on the.
I really said that. I was not kidding.
She really did.
They got very silent. And honestly, it was the adopted dad who broke down. He's like, oh my gosh, I've never even thought about it like that. And I was like, who? And I'm texting Carrie. I'm like, we did not do their home study, did we? Because I know my home study providers would have had that conversation. You know what I mean? And our team, we would have had that conversation. So, but it was neat because you could hear the change in his voice. You could hear the conviction. And they have actually they were like, we talked about grief, because this mom in particular that they were matched with, I was like, look, I'm going to tell you, she's going to explode at some point. I mean, I don't know when it's coming. It can be 6 months from now. It can be a year from now. But I keep telling, I know it's coming, you know, and I'm like, because I said, so here's what I got. I don't care what she says to you. I don't care what she calls you. I need to know that you are still going to love her regardless, because grief does funny things to certain people. And she may hate you, and she may hate you for 6 months, but she needs to know that you love her enough that she can still come back to you, even when she's done venting and calling you all kinds of names, that you're not going to turn your back on her. And so we kind of put them, we did not do their home study, but really at that point, when we saw how uneducated they were, Carrie went to work, and she really did a good job. And our other home study provider did a really good job educating them. And they are turning out to be one of the sweetest placements that we've done. I mean, like they really, their heart changed tremendously.
So what we did is we wanted to make sure that they had that education piece before placement, because we were kind of in that conversation that we have with them, that first meeting, we are kind of identifying things that are concerns to us or things that are strengths. You know, we had a meeting with someone recently, and she was like, I just want to go on the record and say I am a golden retriever. Like, as far as like my behavior, and like I will be a lapdog. And I'm like, okay, so we got to work on make sure you got some good boundaries in place before you really start building that relationship with the expectant mom, because, you know, whatever you do now, you've got to do after. Now, after, same, it doesn't change. So we have to identify those things. And then also we will make sure with post-placement, you know, we require 3 post-placement visits. Our post-placements aren't just, oh, is the baby okay, still breathing, live, woohoo. You know, we want them to write out their story about the child, about their child's birth mom, her story, how this came about. And so we will, if we feel like the adoptive parents did not have as much transracial adoption education as we would have liked to, in order for them to, you know, be here, I'm going to make sure that whoever I assign for the post placement is going to, on our team, if it's Georgia, Alabama, or Florida, that they are including that. If it's in another state and I don't have, I'm not the one doing the post-placement, I'm going to be giving those topics to the person who's providing the post-placements and say, I need you to discuss this with them and include it in the report. And there's been times where I've gotten on and, and just said, I just want to call and check and make sure everything's okay. But what I'm doing is going through those topics again. Kelsey, to go back to what you said, we have it, and we've had this struggle. We want to be, Abiding Love wants to be there for expectant moms. We created Abiding Love because the expectant moms and birth moms were needed for a moment to sign documents, hand her baby over, and gone. And that's not, it's just deplorable. And that's just not what adoption should be. It's not what adoption can be. And so we created this in a unique situation because we want to be that answer for expectant moms. So we do feel like if we have a waiting list of people that we can say, we did their home study, we've gone through their home study, they are ready to go. But then I'm like, oh, but do you want to, you might want to parent. It's going to be harder to say, hey, let's talk about parenting, because I've got these people calling me saying, where's my baby? Or where am I on the list? Or, all of that. And even if we had people that really got adoption, and I know me, and I know I would be waking up in the middle of the night and say, oh my gosh, the Smiths have been waiting for like a year. And that is not our calling. Our calling is not to get people matched. Our calling is to love her and love her well, whether she parents, whether she makes an adoption plan. So if y'all have any advice on that, that's one of the reasons that we have organized ourselves that way. That's one of the reasons that we have not had a list. And I feel like on both sides, there's positives and negatives.
I say, honestly, out in the field, I get more positives about not having a list, just being out in the front line. I get a lot, because people are like, wait a minute, so you don't have like 15 people who've given you $10,000 to sit on your list? And I'm like, no, don't have that, And so I personally, being on the front lines, like not having a list. It just, I just do.
Yeah, we really like the structure. It's very new. We'd love to see more kind of structure around that. I mean, we definitely know that the adoption education piece is a big issue. When I have families come to me, after placement, adoptive families that have said, oh my gosh, I learned more from you in an hour listening to your live than I did in home study. I have a big freaking problem with that.
Amen.
That's families all over this country learning more from a random birth mom on an Instagram live than in their freaking home study. We are missing some huge pieces. So I know we could go on and on about this conversation, but I appreciate you sharing some of that. I want to go back to Amy and see if she had another question that she really wanted to ask.
Well, honestly, throughout all the discussion, you guys really have covered a lot of what I was going to ask. I mean, I having come from a closed adoption, one thing that I know that it's been a long time, but I know that there are probably still women who come into an adoption plan thinking that they would prefer it to be closed. And I kind of wanted to know, like, what kind of education and counsel do you give to those women who really believe that they think it would be better to not know anything?
Great question.
Well, I kind of use my experience as far as like just being an adoption professional for so long, but also being an adoptive mom. And so I tell them little things like, I remember the first time my son was like, he was in kindergarten and some friend's mom came in and she was pregnant. And he was like, I want to see pictures of me in my birth mom's belly. And I was like, buddy, I'm sorry, I don't have that. And he was like, why? And you deal with it age appropriately as best you can. I've also worked with enough women that I've had the same phone number since 2004. And so I've worked with enough women that eventually somebody finds me again and wants to know what's going on with their baby. And so how I typically handle it is I tell my mamas that I will do what they want me to do. As far as like, if they say right now they want it to be closed, I will respect their wishes. But I go through we now have research that shows that's not a good idea, like legitimate, studies and research. And so if they'll allow me, I go through that. Some of them are just like, I am not interested in reading that article. And so, but I do try to tell them like how important it's been for my sons and my daughter, to just be able to like randomly say, hey, does so-and-so like sushi? Like, yeah, I don't know, but let's choose. And that came from my daughter. She's now 6, gonna be 7 soon. And she asked me that question at 4. And I'm like, I don't know. She said, well, text her, like I was stupid or something. I was like, okay, well, I will. And so, anyway, but I share those stories with them. I'm like, they're going to want to know you. You're important. And you matter. And they're going to want to know you. And so I'm going to start crying. I don't be boohooing on Zoom.
Well, while you're trying not to cry,
I know.
but, the thing is about education. Again, it's about dispelling a lot of the stigmas and unknowns about, oh, well, it's going to be confusing to the child, or they won't know who their mom is or their dad. All of these things that have been swirling around in the adoption community, that is part of our responsibility in pre-placement and while we're counseling to be saying, no, this is what adoption looks like. Everybody has their roles. You need boundaries. We talk about, if you have an aunt, that is very important in your life. If she's not your mother, she's not telling you you've got to go brush your teeth or you've got to go do this or that, but she's a significant part of your life. Using different analogies, whatever will work with that young lady, that she will get, if it's the aunt analogy or not. And I'm not trying to equate expectant mom, birth moms to aunts, please know that, but we try to use whatever it is that they will get and to kind of see that concept. But again, it starts in education on dispelling these atrocities that we've been selling, adoption community has been selling, and it's not true. And we've got to get rid of these lies, and it's educating. From a legal end, we will still do a post-adoption contact agreement.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
So
we will honor them. And if they, again, even after all the talking ad nauseum, trying to get her to change her mind about openness, we will honor her request. And, but I let them know that, look, like Carrie said, we're still going to do this agreement because you're going to come to me one day. And when you do, I'm going to have a box waiting for you. And so we do the agreement. And then how we approach it with the adoptive family, as far as the adoptive family is concerned, that sucker's always open. And so what I tell them is that when we go through the grief education again, and we tell them, look, everybody grieves differently. It may be 2 years before she shows up and wants to talk to you, but you still have to talk to her. And so we kind of do it that way, to just kind of encourage, if she gives us an email, like sometimes I can get women to create a brand new email and give us an email address. And I ask them to send things to that email address. So that way, when she's ready to open it, if it's 2:00 in the morning, she can open it. And so that's a lot of how I handle it. And they're like, okay, I can handle that, but I don't have to go see them face to face, and I can do it on my terms when I'm ready. And I'm like, yes. And so that's been one of my biggest successes with trying to at least have, because then we talk about, when she does email you at some point, if she emails you back, then respond. Let's try that way. And so that's kind of how I think I've dealt with it, trying to encourage. I really don't want if I can help it, I would love for no placement that we do to be closed. If I can help it, I would really love for my mamas to be matched with a family who doesn't just love them, but doesn't just love their baby, but loves them. That's my ultimate goal. If I get to the point where I'm worked out of the adoption and nobody needs to call me anymore, then I've been successful. Abiding love has been successful if we're not needed anymore.
What I love to know, and what really brings me a lot of, I guess you could say, comfort, is that, that the open closed status is really working for the security and protection of everyone involved, and not, I feel like the closed idea was protecting the adoptive family from the birth mother.
Hmm.
So like there was, sorry about that. Like there was some danger in the birth mother being able to contact the family or stalking them or whatever the attitude was. But I feel like it was really more about protecting the adoptive family than considering the needs of the child or the birth mom or birth family. So I really love to hear that that attitude has completely changed. So
Well, we're trying to get it to change. I mean,
It's
we're
completely changed with us. So understand, like, what Carrie and I are talking about is what we do at Abiding Love. I can't promise what other people are.
That's true.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, we've spoken at conferences, and people look at us like we have 3 heads, and they're like, "Yeah, but how do you do this in the real world? Like my child's birth mom is an addict. Like, so what? Okay, we can still make this work." You know, and so, but we still get looked at strangely, and it's okay. But we've got to take what you just described of how closed adoptions, you're right, it was to protect adoptive parents, and it was wrong, and I can't change that. But what I can change is right now, right here with us, and how we love and how we're doing things. I can't be looking over my shoulder. I can't be looking over there at that agency and saying, ooh, they're doing this, or ooh, they're doing that. That's not my job. My job is to sit here in the space that we have and love her well. And I want her to be protected. Again, like Vicki said, we could, our strength, we had a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago. Ashley, you were on that. And we were supposed to talk about our biggest strengths and our biggest weakness. And our biggest strength and our biggest weakness are the same, you know, that we're so focused on expecting moms and birth moms that we don't give enough love over there to the adoptive parents. That's the criticism we get. And I think that's a strength and that's a weakness. And I hate that that's how adoptions were, but I want to change it for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, again, it all comes back to education and where we can each do our part. I mean, you know, and you guys have seen this when I speak at conferences, when I talk about Derek sleeping over, the adoptive parents lose their damn mind about it, you know, and I'm just like, it's not kidnapping. I returned the kid. It's fine. And I understand that not everyone's going to be on that level, and that's okay. That's not the expectation, but they got to be able to just be okay with whatever they come to the table with, and have integrity in what they promise.
Well, but also you've grown into that.
Yeah.
So, and I think that one of the things that we need to make sure that we are, when we're educating our expectant moms of what this is going to look like, a relationship takes work. It takes work on both sides. And so it's not going to be automatically spending the night. It's going to be working through that and building that one family, so that you can do that. And that is as an adoption professional, that is part of our responsibility when we are working with a mom to look at what does an open adoption look like, what does parenting look like, to make sure that they don't have false expectations of every, you know, Christmas Eve, this is going to happen or that. We gotta show that it's a relationship.
Sarah, let's go down. Do you have one more question you want to ask?
I had, let's see, you guys pretty much covered most things. I mean, really, I really only had 2 more. You kind of covered about talking about grief with expectant moms pre-placement, but I wanted to know how much emphasis is placed on talking about delayed grief and trauma, specifically because it didn't hit me till I was 12 years out post-placement, my first. And so, and when it hit me, it was like a slap in the face and a light bulb over my head at the exact same time. Because it was like, I had never allowed myself to grieve. I had never given space for that. But at the same time, nobody had given me permission to do that. I hadn't given myself permission to do that. And so I just wanted to know if you guys talk about delayed grief and trauma, and that it may not hit you for quite some time. You may kind of have blinders on of what the rainbows and sunshine actually is, as opposed to what really is going to come for you.
We actually, we spend a lot of time on grief. I'm just going to be honest. Probably some people would say we probably spend too much and we beat it too much. But one of the things that I like to talk about is we talk about how people grieve differently, how some people turn to alcohol, how some people turn to drugs. Like even like when we talk about hospital plans, I'm like, okay, what are you doing when you leave the hospital? And they just I'm like, no, like, what are you doing? Are you going home smoking weed, watching Netflix? You going home drinking a beer? You going home to sit with your boyfriend? Like, what exactly are you going to do that first week? And then we talk about, like, if you're in Walmart and you see baby clothes, or you're in Target and you see baby clothes and you need to cry. You know, you can't sit there and cry for 30 minutes and fall on the floor, but let the tears come, deal with it. And if you need to call me or you need to see somebody, then just, you know, call me or call your advocate. But I tell them all the time, I'm like, you can move forward, but the only way you're going to move forward is if you face your grief. If you run from it, it's going to come chase you. And so one of the best analogies, I think, or they've told me that I've used is, I always ask them, have you ever been to the ocean? Have you ever been to the beach? And most women say yes, where I am. Not always, but most. And so when I talk about that, you know how like when you're out in the water and it's like, it's at your ankles, but then the water comes in and it's at your waist and you're not expecting it, or you wade out a little bit deeper, like, oh, I got this, you know, and then all of a sudden you drop because you didn't know there's that drop there when you were playing in the ocean. I'm like, that's how this is going to be. I said, or you can see it mounting. You can learn the landscape. You can kind of get to know that ocean. You can kind of get to know that beach. You can ask people, hey, you been to that beach before? Is there like, you know, is there a place where you drop off? Is there a place? And ask questions. And I said, or you can get to know the landscape, and then you can go out in the water and you can see the wave coming, and you can see the wave coming, and you can dig your feet in. Because I don't know, I mean, if you've been in the ocean, you know what I'm talking about. You're going to dig your feet in, and you're going to brace yourself for that wave to hit you. And you're not going to drown, and you're not going to fall, and it's going to come past you. And yeah, you might have sand in your bathing suit, but you're going to be okay, you know? And so that's the explanation that I kind of try to give, is that, you know, and I tell them, I mean, that it's like, I tell them, but I can't, again, y'all all know, I can't force somebody to comprehend something. But at least when it hits, if we've talked about it enough, and we've given enough like word pictures and things like that, I feel like that when it hits them, they're better prepared. They're so much better prepared when it hits. Does that make sense? And so that's how I try to do it. Now, if you got better advice, I am all for it, because
well, on the other end, I'm dealing more with I'm in charge of making sure all the groups are happening. We've got 5 birth mother support groups. So on the flip end of after placement, then, we're working with making sure that trying to get them to group so that they have a place when 12 years out it comes. So I think that's important in creating that space, staying in touch. If it is 12 years later and they need counseling, come to us, let us know. I mean, I feel like that's our duty, as an agency, to be doing that. So, if we had a birth mom that placed 4 years ago, and Christmas was just really hard for her. And so even though she goes to group every month, she's like, Karen, I need to go, and we need to eat and just talk. And so so that was important to do. So one of the things I think that hasn't been brought up, so I'm just going to bring it up, I'm looking at our social media feed, and there's a lot of people on there right now that are very anti-agency and anti what has happened in the past. And I feel like I keep saying, I'm sorry, I hate it. It wasn't us. So I don't know why you're putting it, saying we're horrible and lumping us in with the others, but I'll take it. But one of the things they keep bringing up, so I'm going to bring it up here, is money. Let's talk about money. That's an issue that we get a lot of. Well, if you're really for expectant parents, then you wouldn't be, having any money. So, or you wouldn't be charging anybody. And so I want to take a moment and do that, if that's okay with you, Vicki, and Ashley, and all of y'all. I know that wasn't, maybe that was a question that was coming. Was that a question?
It was on my list, but go ahead.
sorry. But to pay for advocates and to pay for counseling, to pay for all of the intricacies that go into making sure that the home study is done right, making sure that all of the clearances are done, making sure that everything within ICPC stands for the Interstate Interstate Compact on the Placement of Children. That's embarrassing. I messed that up. That's like the first time in like 15 years I've ever messed that up. But our ICPC packets are like this thick. Because of Georgia, especially all the details that are needed and everything. It's a lot of work, people, when it's done the right way. Now, as an attorney that was being called in on agency adoptions where I was the first person they had ever met in person, and I was looking at that statement of fees that was being filed with the court, and they were charging, all this money, and yet she'd never met anybody face to face. I have a serious problem with that. We really believe in face-to-face care, before and after, during the whole thing. So, it's expensive. One of the nice things about Abiding Love, I'm an attorney, so we can include all of the attorney's fees in it. We don't make people, okay, well, this is ours, and then you're going to have to go find an attorney, and it's going to be an extra amount. If they don't want to use me as an attorney, then that would, have to be, they would do that. But we've tried to keep our expenses down. And that's a big deal. I wish we could work for free. Vicki, especially. Vicki, how many days away last year did you spend away from your family? It was something.
Well, hotel-wise, I spent 150 nights away from my family last year doing face-to-face interaction with all my mamas. Because even if I have a team, I meet every mother. I personally meet every mother that my team works with. And I let them know, I'm like, if she's doing something wrong, here's my number. You need to tattle, I'm the one you need to tattle to. And so, but I meet every one of my moms. And so just like I said, just last year I was gone, and that's just counting hotel nights. That's not what I did locally, where I just spent the day away from my family. That was just away. And that was all just ministering to my mamas.
And she gets a military discount for hotel rooms. So
yes, I do love my military discount. I save us a lot of money that way.
So, I mean, it costs money in order to do this. There are some agencies that are charging, and I don't see the effort that they're putting in it. I'm not going to name them. That's not my job. My job is to focus on us and making sure that we don't turn into that, and that we stay true to the calling that we have. But I wish adoption was free. But when it's done right, there's a lot of time. I had a judge once who asked me to put in all of the hours I spent on an adoption. And so I put it in, and the adoption should have cost $188,000. And I only started working with her when she was 6 months pregnant. So, and then they were like, well, maybe you spent too much time with her. I'm like, oh, dear Lord.
I just wanted to comment real quick, and then I'm sorry, I have a previous commitment, so I have to jump off. But as far as, the thing is, in my story, I spent a good amount of time being very angry about things that I felt like were really unfair. And I can't even compare my story to some of the women that I've met. I've heard some really egregious stories and things that have just happened to people. I understand there are so many women out there that have been really royally screwed. So I can understand their anger, and often they're just really looking for somebody to point the finger at. And because so many women with a lack of support don't know what to do with that anger. And so I just really have a lot of respect for you guys and for the organizations like what Ashley's doing and stuff, because the only thing that we can do is continue to encourage women to share their stories and to keep moving forward and to keep talking about what went wrong so that we can do better going forward. We know better now, we want to do better in the future. I can't change the fact that I had a closed adoption or that I missed 18 years of my daughter's life. I can't go back and change any of that. But what I can do is I can open my mouth and I can start talking about why this should not happen going forward, so that no other women have to do the same thing that I did. And so not everybody is there. Not everyone is able to give that kind of emotion behind it, or and they're more comfortable staying in a place of anger. I just wanted to say I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I think you guys are doing awesome things, and I hope that we can keep working together and just keep doing what we can do. But I got to drop off, so thank you guys.
Love you, Amy. Thank you.
And
Bye.
Amy, if you have any recommendations, send it to us so that we can keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, ladies.
Love you, Amy. Bye.
Bye.
Kelsey, we'll take one more question from Kelsey, and then I'll just close up really quick because I know everyone's got kids at home and things they got to get back to.
Okay, I have a 2-part question then. So, they kind of go hand in hand. It's kind of a stretch. It's fine. We'll make it happen. So, okay, so you guys said you work with obviously a different demographic. I know you work on the Florida-Georgia line, and I know that demographic is actually very similar to the demographic we have out here in LA and Orange County. Right on the border of LA and Orange County is where we see that same thing. And so I guess like at my last job at the firm, I spent a lot of time calling rehab centers and trying to find moms a bed, and it's tough. Like I definitely empathize if that's what you guys are doing too. But I guess I want to know, what do you guys do for women that have substance abuse issues? And I think our role as adoption professionals only goes so far. Obviously, we can't solve all the problems of the women that come into our offices, but at the same time, the reality is we are often the first stable professional person that they come in contact with that they actually have trust for. So we do have an opportunity there, obviously. And then in the same breath, I guess, in those circumstances, a lot of times those moms we're meeting them at the hospital for the very first time because they've not contacted anybody. They're coming to the hospital. They're saying to the nurse, I'm not leaving with this baby. Figure it out. So what do we do for those women? Because that's a huge gap, I guess.
Well, one of the things is that we always talk about, I basically tell them, like, you might as well tell me the truth because you're going to sign a HIPAA and I'm going to know what's coming, when I talk to the doctor. And so, some we have that are really upfront with us. Some, they still try to come up with crazy stories, how that got in their system. We have actually built, Carrie and I doing this for so long before we created Abiding Love, we have both built really strong relationships with tons, I shouldn't say tons, that's over exaggerating, with several key rehabs, and they will make room for one of our moms, usually, if she wants to come. But now I'm going to be honest, I have been doing this for a long time. And so I also know just to put somebody there to put a Band-Aid on something, it's really not solving anything. It's better to wait till she's actually ready to go. And so like I could probably tell you about 5 right now. I'm not going to give you their names, but I hear from them when they're really hungry, lost all their clothes or something. And then they call me and we have the same thing. We go, we eat. I help her get some clothes. And our running joke is
we really like to eat. Have y'all, has that come across?
I put on way too much weight since starting Abiding Love. But anyway, but we go eat and we talk, and our running joke is like, even when she calls me, I'm like, are you ready to go? She's like, just shut up, and but it's like a thing, and I'm like, I know one day you're gonna say yes to me, so I'm gonna keep asking the question, and as soon as she says yes, even if it's 10 years from now, I'll pick her up. One of the things that, and this is not bragging, but I know people just don't really think we are who we say we are, but I had a mom I literally met, she was actually in county jail. And it was back when you handcuffed everybody to the bed. I don't know if you know, in Georgia, you can't do that anymore. But anyway, I met her with the deputy in the room, and that was the first time I laid eyes on her. And after that, I got permission to do professional visits with her at the county, and we built a relationship. And then we started emailing together, and she got transferred to prison, and kept in touch with her. And when she got out of prison, I was her second phone call after her mom, and was able to get her. They had dropped her off in some horrible, I mean, it was nasty transition house. And when I went to go pick her up, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I ain't taking you back there. We got to figure something out. And God was good and allowed us to go through 3 parole boards to get her. I called one of the programs that I told you about. I was like, hey, she right now doesn't have she doesn't have a substance abuse problem because she's been in prison. I said, but she needs to learn how to come back into the life, you know. And they made room for her. And so we were able to get permission from 3 parole boards, and I was able to leave with her that day and drop her off at that program. And another great thing about her story is her adoptive mom kept her word and emailed her all throughout while she was in prison. And I was able to take her before we got to the new program. I was able to take her to meet her daughter for the first time and meet the adoptive parents, not just from email. And so as far as rehab goes, we have connections, and we call, and we've, like I said, it's one of the advantages of being old. You get to know a lot of people. And so
I am not old.
Yes, you are. Quit living in denial. So we have a lot of connections. And so, you know, it's been nice and learning how to build and, you know, and we just got in Florida. So that's like an area that I've got to build. I don't have that, but I have now finally built some in Alabama, which is nice. And so that's one thing. And then meeting somebody at the hospital, you know, there are people who are going to disappear. You know, I can't tell you that every woman I've worked with wants to be my friend. Shocker, I know. But
I have so many things to say about that.
I know, be quiet. Mute her. But I think it's really treating them like a person and not seeing, and I'm not trying to be overly religious, but it is kind of who I am. I mean, I'm not going to lie. And so seeing her and not her sin, I guess is the best way for me to say it. And I think she sees that from me and can sense it from me because, you know, I mean, I like to I tell every once in a while, I'll tell some stories about my past. I don't share it a lot, but when I need
issues, we all got sin. We all have.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, this is the cleaned up version. You met me a long time ago. I wouldn't have been quite this cleaned up. I said, there's hope. That's what I tell them. And they usually just laugh after that. So, but and then I work hard. I mean, if they've given me their number, I try to work hard to create a relationship with them. I don't leave it to them to call me. I try to text, hey, how you doing? You hungry? I'll buy you a free meal, you know, and people talk over food. I've learned that. So,
well, and also getting them into group. Yeah. So that's a big deal is, you know, making sure that they know about group. So even if we just met at the hospital, that just like Vicki said, that means we got a lot of work to do. They might disappear on us, but we want to be able to provide that space.
Well, then I guess my last question, I know I'm breaking the rules, but you know, is do you guys want to bring an agency to California because we have zero good Carrie says no.
I'm not scared.
They're keeping it muted and not.
No, I'm not scared. Carrie's the one that gets scared about going places, but I'm like, sure, I'll go.
But see, this is what's.
I'll finally take my kids to Disneyland.
I have a really good list of really good social workers here, good attorneys. There's not a ton of them, but I could set you up. Just saying.
Picking it up.
But see, this is my thing, and
I can find you employees. I can find you a team.
I'm sure you can. Growth scares the bejeebies out of me, and the reason being is because, guys, it is so easy for us as an adoption agency, as an adoption attorney, as adoption professionals, that line of going backwards, of it all being about money, is so easy. And so growth scares me, because I think
It's funny because you know how broke we are.
the thing that the thing, I mean, it's scary, because the thing that makes Abiding Love different is we really believe in that one-on-one, and we believe in relationship, and not just saying it, we want to walk it, and we don't want to walk it long term. And so that growth scares me. I mean, Vicki can tell you, when God called us to go to Alabama, you know, I was like, oh.
I was like having to drag her. I was like, then I had to invoke God. I was like, girl, are you actually gonna disobey the Lord?
Yeah. And then with Florida, like we for 2 years, we were like, no, yeah, no. And then she locked me in a hotel room in Chicago and said, write the policies and procedures.
Florida, I'm more worried about Florida. I'm just gonna be real honest with you.
In about a year, I'll be moving there, so hopefully I'll be able to maybe help y'all out in that respect.
No, that would be great. I'm just, I need to hush before I make somebody mad. But
we just
got some things that make me uncomfortable, and I don't know exactly how successful we'll be there.
Florida's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we were concerned about going to Florida, because we were like, we're not going to compete with these agencies that are throwing money out and writing checks, and because we're not doing that. But we really just felt the Lord saying, you know, we've got the moms for you to minister to, and those are the ones that, and so, you know, it's about the one. So if I wrote policies,
and you got to plant that seed of authenticity. Yeah, you got to plant that seed of authenticity. You guys are being authentic. From this conversation, it sounds like, you know, you guys are being authentic in it. And so for you to be an authentic agency working in Florida, you can plant that seed, and maybe people can follow suit if they can stop sticking their heads up their own butts.
Well, we need some more people in Florida. We've got a great birth mother advocate in the Treasure Coast area, which we're really excited about. She's also an adoptive mom, and she has walked it really well with one of our birth moms. And so, and she's loved, it's been a difficult situation. She's loved big, and she's loved well. You know, I'm excited about her being able to be there. So we're trying to figure out home studies. You know, a lot of, we didn't go into Florida to do home studies, but we're getting more and more people saying, but we need the education. We need that. So we're looking for the right people, because I don't want people just that are going to walk into a house and check off things. I can find a robot that'll do that. I want people that are going to provide the education that they need. So if y'all know anybody,
we're all on board with that education.
Yeah. So just before we wrap up, I just want to thank you guys again for sitting with us. We have a million more questions that we could ask, and I would love to do this again. And again, just coming from someone who has sat with these women and watched them, I mean, I know they were talking about the rapport that they've built with rehab centers. I've seen them do that with law enforcement. I've sat with Carrie at 3 a.m. at the Waffle Houses. I know the kind of stuff that happens in the demographic that they're in. They've worked really hard to build relationships with people that can step in and help and show up when the women need them, even if the women don't want, because they push back a lot. They test those women to no end. I've seen it, I've sat with it. And, but I still have to this day been some of my favorite women that I've ever been able to sit with. Just absolutely incredible. I get emotional thinking about them all the time, because it's just such a powerful, powerful group. If you are a birth mother watching this and you think that something should be different, don't just sit there and bitch online. Send them a message, get on the phone with them, and they will talk to you about it. They will ask questions. They will ask you, well, where do you think we could be different? Because I'm calling out the birth moms and holding us accountable that just getting online and bitching about things that happen to us that were crappy is not enough. I get it. And I see it. And this is why we wrote the programs that we did, because we knew you guys didn't get enough support. We can't change it. I can't do anything about what happened in the 60s and 70s, but I've been listening long enough to say, we can't let it happen again. So what can we do? This is what we can do. We can write the nation's first curriculum and try and hold agencies accountable to say, show up and host free support groups. So at least we can get some kind of support and meet other women and talk through our crap once a month. That's what I can do. I can do that. You may not be able to do that, but you can definitely get on a phone call and talk to these women about what's wrong, what happened to you, and how can we fix it. That's the only way this changes. Just complaining about it isn't getting anything done. So to the birth mothers that are watching, I get it. I have sat with them and challenged these women. We have had hours and hours of phone calls talking about crap. We didn't even get into flying women to different states. We didn't even get into half of the stuff that I would love for you guys to be able to hear and understand what happens behind the scenes. What you see is those little squares on social media is not the grind that we are all in. And so if you have questions and you want change, get on the phone with them, because I know they are not afraid of hard conversation. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If you guys wanted to add anything else really quick, Vicki or Carrie, before we let people go.
Excuse me. I would love to do this again.
Yep.
And invite other people, or I don't know how we could do it, but one of the things that I would like to see is like somehow get it out there that expectant moms, these are like the things you should be looking for. These are the questions you should be asking. And if you're not, and you don't get certain answers, like we had our top 5, and when we kind of made a joke of it, like, run, Forrest, run. You know what I mean? Like, if they don't do this, then it was kind of like, run. You know, one of us was kind of echoing in the back going like, run, you know.
That was me.
That's where I think that it just, people don't know, because when you call, and y'all know better than me, so please put me in my place, but when you pick up a phone or you go to the internet and you do something and somebody says, oh, this is how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
That person is the professional.
Yep.
You just believe what they say. You don't know that you can demand different. And so that's what I would love. I don't care how we have to do it. And y'all don't even need me, but that is one thing I can tell you. That needs to be, that's so many conversations that I have. I mean, I'm like, and I even tell the moms when they call our 800 number or text me, I'm like, you really need to meet me face to face. I said, because when you eyeball me, and if you don't like me and you don't feel comfortable with me, then you need to go to a different agency, because this is one of the biggest decisions of your life. Yeah. And if you don't feel comfortable with me,
well,
you need to take off and interview somebody else, or compare.
Well, and you can hold us accountable. Our team will put together, I have free downloads for questions for adoptive parents to ask agencies. You hold us accountable. Our team will get together and write questions for expectant parents, and we'll make it a free download, and you can share it, and we'll have women be able to submit questions. It's a start, and we can get that conversation started, and we can at least do that. So
that is great, because I think that will deal with some of the flying out of state. But
you know, it's hard.
I would have had something like that. I wish that someone would have given me the tools of what to ask, because looking back at it now, nothing. Like, they told me what I needed to know, and that was it.
You know, it's really interesting, because you have to understand from our side too. You know, I get people all the time, Carrie, when you were talking about having worrying about all these adoptive families on your list and all of that, but still being able to serve the moms well. People want me all the time to sit with pregnant moms, and it's a really hard line for me to sit in, because I can't sit with them and maybe be neutral enough to talk about adoption options, because I've placed. And so people all the time are like, you know, I can talk about post-adoption all day long because I'm in it, I've done it, and that's my space. So women are coming to me who have already made the decision without me in any way, shape, or form being an influence or coercive or anything like that. So it's really hard for me to sit in this space. And I know that the options counseling piece is missing greatly, and we're missing it from the pregnancy centers, and we're missing it from the agencies and all of these things. So it's that same fine line. How do I sit with the moms after adoption in their grief, knowing that I talked to them when they were pregnant and was a part of an influence in that. And so there's always been that really thin line for us, but we definitely can put a list on the website of questions that they should be asking to make sure that they're getting the proper care.
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Carrie, anything else?
No, thank y'all. I appreciate it. Kelsey, you looking good out there in California. Sarah, looking good out there in Utah. So come on. And Ashley, I mean, always looking good out there in Utah.
Hey, Kelsey, text me. We'll talk.
Come out to Georgia or Florida.
Okay, look, I'm not loyal to anyone, so you let me know. We can talk.
I can't afford you.
Guys, I love you so much. We will definitely be doing this again, and we'll make sure that this is up on the free video library, that you guys can watch this and keep the conversation going. It's the only way that this continues to change. So,
Thank
love you
y'all
guys
so much.
Hi, thank y'all.